Welcome back, students, to week 8 of the Company Program Podcast. Our laundry list of tasks is really dwindling down. We have one major assignment that we need to focus on this week, and that's the business plan. The business plan is the capstone assignment of the first half of the company program. What this means is that you're going to be pulling together everything that you learned and applying it in this assignment. In this business plan, you're going to talk about who your company is, what you want to do, and how you're going to do it. It's also a place for you to set goals, so you want to say how far you plan on taking your company. We communicate all of these things with different exercises that we covered in the past, such as evidence from the value proposition, evidence from the break-even analysis, as well as the product development form. If you haven't started this assignment yet, it's about time to get on it. It's due at the end of week 9, so the deadline is fast approaching, and this isn't something that you can do overnight. It requires a lot of communication and planning, so start managing your time this week to finish the business plan. Coming up next week is the business exam. We're going to take a little bit of time during our next week's meeting in order for every student to write this. Similar to the business plan, this is sort of a test to see everything that you learned in the first half of the company program. Don't worry, it's nothing too crazy or too difficult. We're just overviewing a lot of the things that you covered during your previous company program meetings. If you need some sort of study guide or extra content, linked in the description is the playlist for all the business tutorials for this year's company program. And that's it. Like I mentioned before, our laundry list of tasks is really dwindling down. This week, nothing is actually due. The business plan and the business exam are both due at the end of week 9. Take this as an opportunity to plan your operations. I know a lot of companies have started to see how they can assemble their product and organizing people around that. So keep that good work up. Something else that we should start thinking about is our plan for sales and company branding. These often go hand in hand together. This week's podcast guest is Wil from Oak and Tonic. He's an expert in branding and has created a distinct style for his own company. We talk all about his own story, his brand, and his company in this interview, so check it out. Hey, Wil, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well too, thanks. I really appreciate you joining us here in this week's company program podcast. I was looking forward to speaking with you because I know the business you've built and I know the unique work you do. But before we jump into all that exciting stuff, would you be open to sharing a bit about yourself and your journey with myself and all the students?
Yeah, totally. Okintana, my gosh, we started realistically about, we usually say estimated 2015, so it was about 5 years, 6 years ago, where it was strictly e-commerce online. I was kind of like tinkering away on like my lunch breaks and stuff like that, and I used to be a hairstylist and kind of still do that as well, but yeah, in the lunchrooms, I would be like always, I was always very like sciencey, nerdy in regards to like the products that we use in the hair products and the shampoos, conditioners, the basics, stylings and whatnot. And you've definitely heard this before many times. A lot of companies where they're like, "Oh, I don't like the bad ingredients that are in here and this and that." So I kind of took it upon myself to do some more, research into it. And then the more I delved into it, the more I found how like the cortex of hair cuticle and everything was very similar to the skin and dermal layers. And when we start to kind of like peel back everything and what they're made of, proteins to keratins, etc. So I was like, you know what? It's interesting how we have these products, and we dive so much into like more unnatural forms of it. Um, that there had to be a better way. You'll always hear that from different founders. So yeah, dove into it, did a lot of research into like various different brands, and yeah, I found out that it's kind of go time. Then I went a little bit further into it, and I noticed that our industry, health and beauty speaking, is very focused on. We try to do it. There's a lot of greenwashing going on and things like that, which is something that I don't really fully appreciate. But when I looked at the brands that I kind of like look up to, and in regards to that, let's say maybe like Detox Market, out of the gates, Clementine Fields, Credo does an absolutely phenomenal job as well. So I've always looked up to them. So they're a good little study as well to look into. But none of these brands have ever solely focused on 100% Canadian skincare, hair care, and body care and lifestyle brands. Even to this day, you can go look at all the other options within the market, and we don't see that. it is maybe 25% Canadian, but the rest is either U.S., international, overseas, etc. So I was like, how can we modernize this and create this effect that we solely focus on 100% Canadian skincare, which is already rated by EWG standards, Environmental Workers Group, as the second highest international curated system of products. So, and making it look modern, like I didn't want to go with the whole stereotypical beavers, moose, and maple syrup drizzling on the walls kind of vibe, right? Like we're better than that. So yeah, that's kind of how I started off with the online aspect of it. And then, small businesses are like, we're always talking, meeting. It's not, what you know, who you know. The more you get out there and talk with people, the more opportunities kind of arose. And then I got a friend of mine that made a suggestion that, hey, you should reach out to one of these malls and, touch base with them. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, like it's weird. Didn't want to go in that avenue per se, but why not? Right. Like, we did our farmers market street festivals. We would, with my family and I, we would lug around a 6 foot table set up at the Lilac Festival, and all these like Inglewood night markets, etc. Get the products into the people's hands, touch, feel, smell, bring the lifestyle and personality of the brand to the people. So at that point, that is only limited to those weekends and those like market sessions. So how are we available to do it all the time? Malls, the only day they're closed is during COVID and Christmas Day. So I basically did that, reached out. South Center Mall, Oxford Properties, huge shout out to them. They are phenomenal people to work with. Gave us the opportunity, and we're just constantly growing and growing. And as a company and as a business, we have grown even through COVID. So um, yeah, that started there. And we started going up into other malls, Market Mall, pop-ups at Chinook Mall, just opened up Cross Iron Mills, all while still doing everything online as well. So that's a little crash course of our little journey.
All right, no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing it. And yeah, no, I don't live too far from Cross Iron Mill, so I've definitely checked out the store before, and I've seen
Cool.
your online platform as well. So, with Oak and Tonic, it started as an e-commerce business, and then your background is as a hairstylist in that industry, and then you aim to kind of create a product or a line of products rather, with kind of a focus on being more green, as well as a focus on being Canadian, I guess,
Right.
right? So, and that's really awesome. So you found a niche, and you developed a business around that. Um, you know, a few times you mentioned about the having a distinct look and a distinct feeling with your product and your brand. And that's kind of the topic that we were wanting to discuss this week. So with that idea of like having a distinct look and feel, um, that's something that you created for your own brand. But could you first share with us why it was important to you and your other, like the people that worked with you early on, to have your own kind of unique brand? What was branding to you at that point?
Totally. Um, not that it's very stereotypical, but in actuality, it is health and beauty. Definitely catered heavily to the female clientele base, right? And my idea was that, yeah, of course, they are the ones that are constantly going to be purchasing, even for the guys on their behalf. There had to be a way of tapping into other markets that we know that guys that want to take care of themselves as well. Women want to, but as we transition and as we age, and as the seasons change, you are always in various different types of products that you are needing. Maybe in the spring, summer, you might do a gel cleanser versus the fall and winter, you do a cream. And then, at age 32, 34, women's collagen productions start to decrease differently, scientifically proven. So then we started to get into like, free radical protection, anti-aging skincare and whatnot. So when we're looking at the branding, I wanted to create a concept where it was very unisex driven. All age groups would go in there. A guy would feel just as comfortable as a woman to go in there. And what I wanted to create on the website and on the store locations is a almost like a blank canvas, right? Because the way we work is we're not like a brand like Rocky Mountain, Soco, or Sage, or MAC Cosmetics, right? Just to name a couple Canadians. Um, we carry over 40 different brands, right? So the idea of not turning it into a boutique store that is just incredibly overwhelming, different colors, all these brands coming together and creating this smorgasbord of like a Shoppers Drug Mart aisle was not the vibe, right? So when you create a blank canvas, and just like quickly backtrack to before I was a hairstylist, I was actually an interior designer. So I did tap into that kind of, excuse me, knowledge, lighting, psychology of movement of humans within the interior of the space, right? How guys typically turn to the right, and when they're shopping and things like that. So I take those kinds of stuff into consideration, especially when marketing in the store and taking a look at placement, product placement. But the brands that we work with, I wanted each of them to always be on a pedestal, always shine in their particular kind of category. And the brands that we do, because it's so heavily curated by myself, I make sure that they don't cross compete. So if there's a brand over here that specializes in this, and there's a brand over here, the product lines and selections that they do have are not really going to compete with this other one over here. Whether that be more, progressive, um, dermatologist grade, or like holistic, um, you know, and then cosmetic differences. So yeah, that was definitely like a really big push for me in regards to how I design the stores, continue to design it, and the experience of the overall branding, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and so um, a follow up question I had to that, it's more on like the execution side. So for example, you had that concept, you knew what it wanted to look like or what you wanted it to look like,
Mhm.
you know, and what you said you did is you kind of tapped into previous knowledge, not just as a hairstylist but also as an interior designer. So for these students, for high school students, they don't usually have a lot of that prior experience. So,
Correct. Yeah.
what kinds of things would you recommend that they look into? I guess what other fields or disciplines should a high schooler look into to explore how they want to communicate their brand?
Honestly, you need to figure out like the niches and the people and understand the consumer more than anything else, right? Like you can understand the market, you can understand the economics, but I can tell you from just being like, heavily, we spread our, took a good time to spread our wings and fly during COVID, right? We're really growing. Um, you can have years of textbook and knowledge and whatnot of experience on your belt, but the fact that we are in a transformative kind of realm where retail is no longer what retail looked like, e-commerce is switching, then you're gonna like drop in these like terms like metaverse coming in here right now and kind of redesigning the wheel and what have you, right? So um you need to know the consumer, you need to know, address the problems and situations that that consumer might have. That's like as old as day. um and when you have that information, you can either be progressive and think forward and get yourself ready in a position that you can meet new experiences that you think might come up. It's a riskier gamble in that direction, but if it pays off very well. Or when you get into, I don't know, it's interesting. The direction. My guess right now moving forward is retail. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a brand experience, and you're not going to have high cash transactions moving forward. And if you want to get your, you know, customers coming in or your guests coming in and what you're going to serve to them, it's going to be truthfully, your guess will be as good as mine and any other companies right now, because that's the realm we're in, and this is such a curious transitional period that the old rules do not apply to current day, and then plus we're making new rules right now for the future. So um, if you just go back to realistically, my best guess at this point is human psychology, interactions, and consumer habits. Those are ingrained almost indefinitely into the consumer. So if you want a more of a safer route, you go in that direction and you do your research in that regards. Don't like poke and prod, like, that's kind of like gambling, so to speak, in the business realm. But if you take more of a psychological twist and then offer something for the consumer that needs their meats, or meets their needs, sorry, then that would be my best suggestion.
And that's a great suggestion. I think we're 8 weeks through the program at this point, and we have yet to really have any discussions or conversations about the individual consumer and getting into the mind of the consumer. So I think that's a great additional piece, or area that students that you can all pursue. I think that was all great, everything we talked about. And just to wrap it up here, because unfortunately we are running up on time. I just wanted to ask if you had any kind of final pieces of advice or anything else you'd like to share with the students about branding or otherwise.
Totally. Branding, it's always transformative. It's always moving forward in a new direction. Don't so heavily rely on it, because as a business, you will consistently continue to rebrand yourself, reimagine, re-envision. So don't like be so busy and stuck up on that, because that's just giving yourself a roadblock right out of the gates, right? And I did that too, and I'm not going to say wasted a lot of time, but I figured that I'm much better off if I just delve into it and actually go into the consumer's mind. So whether that be, if you're an introvert like I used to be, I valued the psychology of the consumer and the nerdy products and the research, and getting myself like really enveloped in that I can speak forwards, backwards, sideways in regards to the brand's options, sourcing of ingredients, etc., um, and build a reputation for us that way. Or if you're more extroverted as an individual, then I highly recommend, as much as you can, meet people, talk with them, and not necessarily just consumers, but people within your industry. Go up into a small business and be like, you know what, I'm doing this extracurricular thing for school. I'd love to kind of shadow your business, maybe on like a side, a couple days a week or whatever, just to see, or volunteer to help out over there and get your hands like really in there. You get the consumer, like businesses, we would love the fact of having someone being like so front forward and being like, oh, come on in, like that's awesome. Why don't we teach you what we kind of know? And don't expect anything in return, in just in regards to knowledge, experience, and then you put that on your resume, and then you just build and you make your connections, you talk with people. And once you have that on your belt, honestly, world's your oyster. Like the knowledge is key at this point, and um kind of enjoy the ride.
And that's a great note to end off on. And that's something I always encourage, probably annoyed of hearing me say this again and again, but students, again, there's so many things for you to explore. And I guess one of the great luxuries of being so young is that you can try a bunch of different things. So I love that idea of just, even a small business, going up to them. There's no harm in it. There's no reason to be shy or scared about it.
Exactly.
Just approaching them and saying, hey, I'd love to learn, because at the very least, you'll get perspective and knowledge, as Will said. But anyways, again, unfortunately, we're at time here. So I wanted to thank you very much for joining us this week again on the Company Program Podcast. Thank you, Will.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thank you to Will for featuring on this week's podcast interview. As usual, I'm going to recap for this week, but the list is very small. We want to continue working on our business plan, and we really want to start preparing for our business exam. I'll mention it again. Resources to complete both of these will be in the description box, so check them out if you're still feeling a little bit shaky about it. And that's all for this week, students. I know a lot of you are focused on your operations, but it's important that we get both of these things done in order to successfully complete the company program. I look forward to seeing all of you next week.